Hey everybody, and welcome to another version, or episode, we should say, of Tax Talks. We have Heidi Henderson joining us on here from Engineered Tax Services, or as some of us call ETS. So how's it going, Heidi?
Really good, John. How are you? So glad to be here.
I am doing great. You know what? I'm excited to do this episode. The topic's maybe not the best for some people. They might have got themselves a little bit of a pickle, but we're going to talk about these ERCs or ERTCs, I think as some refer to those as well too. So,
Yep.
give us a little rundown on what exactly these are and maybe the situation we can call it that we may be in, including some of the IRS updates that have just come out recently on these.
Yeah, John, this is awesome. The timing on this one's perfect. Employee retention credits or employee retention tax credit was a COVID provision that was there for businesses who were impacted by COVID and really needed some additional funding to pay payroll, to make payroll, pay their employees, especially if they kept them on staff during shutdowns or during restrictions. So there were a couple different parameters for qualifying. It was kind of two different things. It's like, did you have reduced receipts, so you were making less money, or did you have some type of mandatory shutdown by a government agency that dictated that you had to shut down or you had to limit or dramatically reduce how you were operating? And if so, there was this tax credit that was per employee that you could claim. It was per quarter per employee. You know, a lot of people have heard or seen, I don't know if anybody has not, I should say, seen the emails or gotten the phone calls or the mailers about you qualify for $27,000 a year per employee and you should claim it right now.
The best of the checks, they randomly mail and it's like
Yeah.
for 300 grand and you might have one employee or you're
Yeah.
self-employed
Yeah.
and they just make this
Yeah.
assumption, right?
Right. Or the email every single day that says, you qualify, hurry, hurry and claim this right now. It's just incredible the companies that sort of came out of the woodwork to drive this particular credit. A lot of people didn't think they qualified early on. And so there was a very sort of delayed timeline of people jumping in and actually claiming the credit. So to jump and fast forward, you were allowed to be able to go back and claim the credit up to 3 years after the quarter ended. So it was in 2020 and 2021. So the quarters are beginning to drop off just now. But really, there's still about a year left of continuing to claim credits. Well, the IRS came out, so the timely part of this little podcast, September 14th. And the IRS pretty much put a moratorium on claiming any more ERTC claims. And the reason being a few different things. Rampant fraud. And they're saying, look, enough. We're done. Number one, they have a backlog of 600,000 claims. And they said, we're not taking any more claims for one. Second, we're going to look at every single one of these claims. We're going to dig in to every one of them before we push them through and issue any refunds on these. Then secondarily, I thought this was pretty crazy. They said, and if you did claim an ERC and you think maybe you don't actually qualify, we're going to let you pay it back right now before we issue penalties and interest and before we come after you. So here's the
Wow.
process for doing that. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Like it's a pretty significant memo, and it was a surprise. And it was issued the 14th, and as of that day, it said, boom, that's it. We are accepting no more claims, at least as of right now. They're saying until the beginning of the year, but our expectation would be that they'll cancel it.
And saying it, I wouldn't exactly call it a comedic delivery of that, but it is kind of funny, right? Like they know there's such a problem, so there's so much fraud in this, but they also are making that educated assumption, we can call it, that so many people have been either A, taken advantage of it or know they did something wrong, that they're like, listen, before we really slap you in the hand, you can apologize and just fix your own mistake. Wow, has the IRS ever done that in the past, or is that something that's kind of a first?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that question. Not that I recall in my years in the accounting industry, not that I've ever seen, but
And you know
I
a lot,
agree.
so if you don't recall it, it probably never happened. Let's just put that out there on the table,
I
right?
was like, wow, this might be the fraud of the century or something.
We're gonna see it
But
on Netflix as like a mini series, right? It's like the
yeah.
we'll
Well,
leave that
and
alone.
I still,
But
like last week, I was still getting emails because we do the ERC, we have since it came on. I am still personally getting emails saying, you qualify, hurry, claim it now. And like, are you not aware that the IRS just put a moratorium on this last week?
That's wild. And like, so, you mentioned a lot of these companies came out of the woodwork, and it is like, from a
Yep.
marketing guy, I think it's pretty hilarious, right? You talk about
Yep.
casting a really wide net. Just
Yep.
their tactics for this
Hmm.
are very interesting, to say the
Hmm.
least. But
Yep.
even, I mean, for somebody who say is, a very small company, even we'll even say self-employed, you still get these letters, or these offers, we'll call it. Up to 10, 15, 20 ex-employees, it's pretty attractive, right? Like, hey, this offer, you qualify for this. And just to clarify too, if somebody's not familiar with exactly what it is, or they just don't open their junk mail or watch TV or listen to the radio or anything else online,
Or read
um,
their emails.
or read their emails. I haven't seen a billboard for those yet, though, but I'm sure they're out there. So this is completely separated from PPP, though, right? Like, totally
Yeah.
different, absolutely not the same. If somebody did take advantage of PPP back in the day and has not taken advantage of, or will not take advantage, utilize an opportunity for
Hmm.
this credit, they they don't have to worry about that, right? So maybe draw the line for us between those two
Yeah, you're
offers.
exactly right. So the PPP loans came first, and then I think that's why some people also thought they couldn't, or that the ERTC was that it was one or the other. You couldn't take both, and that they'd taken PPP. So, there was a lot of confusion. I think it is why some companies that do legitimately qualify for ERC did not claim it early on because of all of the confusion between all these stimulus bills. So you're correct. Totally different tax credit. The PPP also was to help essentially drive some funding that would be forgiven that was ultimately supposed to be used for payroll. And the RTC is very, very similar. It's a tax credit that was, again, meant to essentially refund income taxes paid so that those individuals had a little bit more cash flow in there so they could make payroll. So very similar, and that's where I think some of the confusion came into play because there were a lot of
Mhm.
bills that sort of boiled up right at the same time.
Awesome, awesome. So what might be a quick little piece of advice, or a little knowledge nugget we can give somebody if they're not exactly sure if they've gone about it in the most appropriate way? I know you guys do a ton of this work, as you had mentioned. So I mean, we've referred clients and situations to you guys. You guys have taken fantastic care of them. So you being the master in this space, yes, you can put on your little ERC crown for a moment. What would be some advice you give to somebody? Maybe kind of a couple questions here. If somebody's not sure if they've gone about it the right way, what might be the
Mhm.
best approach for them? But then also, if they've gotten into this potentially with somebody who may have not led them down the right path, what might be your recommendations there as well?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. There are a lot of these companies that specifically have said, look, we've never been audited. We've never had any disallowances. Oh, you're fine. We've got audit defense. We're going to support you if you get audited. The reality of that is, I hate to be a naysayer, but I think the reality is these companies formed for the purposes of doing ERC, and ERC expires, and these companies will be gone if they're not
Mhm.
gone already. Um, it's just the reality of it. So when we look at audit defense, will these companies be there to defend you? I highly doubt it. Yeah, maybe they'll say, "Oh, yeah, here's the calculation we did," but are they going to help support you or have some type of insurance policy to cover penalties and interest if your claim gets thrown out? I would highly doubt it. I would be shocked, as a matter of fact, if they did. So whether you dig back in a little bit to evaluate if in fact your claim is legitimate, if you met those qualifying parameters to claim that credit, if you are waiting on a processed claim and you are a little unsure, it might be time to look back at that and rescind that claim if it's pending. The IRS is, I mean, they have specifically said they are going to look at every single one of these pending claims and a lot of the already claims that have been processed. So if it's one of those things that you've had a little bit of unease about, maybe lost a little bit of sleep, I would say it might not be a bad idea to take a deep dive into it, uh, take another look, and decide if maybe it would make sense to actually rescind that claim, just to protect yourself from some of those additional penalties. Because I know a lot of the clients I've talked to, they actually were required to pay their providers up front. So they've already paid the fees associated with doing the calculations. They're just waiting on pending claims to get their refunds. And the unfortunate reality is I think a lot of people are going to be out of a lot of money at that juncture.
No, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing this for you. or with us, I should say, from you. Again, anybody who's listening to this or watching this, Heidi is the absolute best contact in our proverbial Rolodex of ERC contacts. So thank you for joining us on this. And anybody, if you have any questions, we'll put some contacts in here for Heidi as well as on anything teaching tax flow on our social media, or reach out to us via email on social. We'll be happy to make the connection. So thank you, Heidi, for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Appreciate
Awesome.
being here.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon.